Hello, everyone from Chelsea Fan TV. Welcome back to a brand new show. It's not another episode, it's the first episode of a brand new show, 3 Points Perspective. Do you know what, guys? Like, I interview all the time in the fan camps, but we don't do anything together. So it's nice to get Nina on, nice to get Charlie on, and do something together, something a little bit different. And try and just take something out of what we're seeing at the moment because there's some positives, there's a lot of negatives, and plenty to debate. And we're going to try and get into it with our 3 points. You should be able to see them below. That's what we're going to be covering on this show. Let's just get straight into it, guys. I mean, Charlie, how are you feeling about everything going on at Chelsea? And Pochettino is the big talking point at the moment.
Yeah, mate, there's not much to be positive about at the moment, if we're being brutally honest. I think the three of us are probably three of the more positive people in general surrounding the club, or certainly have been, going back to last season and certainly started this season as well. But, mate, I spoke to you after the game. I was fuming after the game on Sunday. There's literally nothing to be positive about right now. I mean, I suppose one positive could be that the transfer window's open soon and we tend to be busy in that. And that just gives you like a bit of a break from what's happening on the pitch. But yeah, there's not a lot to be positive about. We're struggling. Like, the team's not good. The players aren't playing well. The manager is not really doing well enough. He should be doing better. And yeah, it's just all a bit of a mess, mate. So I don't really know where we go from here because yeah, there doesn't seem to be much light at the end of the tunnel right now.
Mate, honestly, it is difficult, isn't it? Because we are the more positive fans. And even I'm looking at this and I'm going into the preview shows with Kev. And I'm like, mate, we know what's going to happen. We literally know what's going to happen. But I do see some signs. Like, I see a few individuals that are playing well. But then, you've got the arguments about, well, Pochettino needs to be coaching the players better. And you got Conor Gallagher, who's the most improved player in the squad. Why aren't these other players moving in the same direction? I mean, what do you think about it, Nina?
Hello, everyone. It actually is funny though. We are actually the majority, not the majority, the minority of Chelsea fans that have stayed more positive. And I even remember, like, back with Graham Potter, I think us three were still backing him until the very end, which is why I feel the same with Pochettino, because if we backed Graham Potter that much, I definitely believe Pochettino is a much better manager. So I like to think that there is a reason to give him more time. But, it is true. I mean, we see what we see on the pitch. It's not good. We mostly were deceived by what we saw in pre-season. Although the circumstances were different, we had other players. It was sort of like a fresh bounce. Maybe the playing style kind of changed after Nkunku's injury as well. But reality is some of the players are to blame, in my opinion. And the spotlight's all on Poch, but I've been given leeway to a lot of players, but the reality is we haven't been finishing simple chances. And in a lot of those games, we would have taken more points and we would be further up in the league. So if you look at it that way, we probably wouldn't even be having conversations about Pochettino if we got more points than we have. And I know it's easier said than done, but it's true. How many games have we played where we've said, oh, we should have won that game. We should have finished our chances. And when those build up and they add up, it costs in the league as well. So, yes, let's have conversations about Poch, but I think we should have conversations about some of our players too.
I mean, fundamentally,
sorry,
go on.
Last season, we said the same thing, though. And
yeah, true.
To an extent, looking back at it, I really, it seems crazy to say it, but I do think Potter got dealt a difficult hand. And, he wasn't that bad of a coach because you wouldn't get the job if you were that bad, but it looked like we just weren't a team. And I mean, Ziyech spoke about it when he was interviewed the other day about how big the squad was. We've created these problems ourselves for the managers, and Pochettino has been dealt a very difficult hand. And by the way, that's irrespective of the injuries. Now we've got the injuries as well. I mean, it's no easier. Like, nobody's talking about Chukwuemeka. Everyone's talking about Nkunku, but Chukwuemeka was key to our pre-season, and he started the league off well, as on top of that.
You do love Chukwuemeka, Alex.
I love Chukwuemeka. I absolutely love him. And for me, you look at the players that Poch tried to build the team around in pre-season, He hasn't had a few of them players. And now we've got 3 more injuries. We've got Cucurella out. We've got James, which we'll speak about later on. And obviously Sanchez as well, which some people are quite happy about, which I think is a bit strange as well, because, look, don't get me wrong, Sanchez hasn't hit the ground running, massively, but I prefer him over Kepa. I know Kepa was better with his feet and didn't make as many mistakes, but to me, Sanchez makes more saves. And that's what I want from a goalkeeper. Like, the distribution will get there, but even with the best managers in terms of passing out from the back, your Sarris, your Guardiolas, it doesn't click straight away. So I don't know why people are expecting Pochettino to just click his fingers, take a group of young players who have never played at this level, never played together, don't know who to look up to, and just come out swinging straight away. I mean,
I do think there should be some basics should be there, like regardless of, like, these professional footballers, regardless of whether like they're good enough right now to play for the club, there are fundamental basics that are lacking in this team that should be coached into these players. Like, why can we not defend crosses into the box? Why can't we defend set pieces? Are you telling me that Thiago Silva, Colwell, Badia Shiel, like, these guys are not good enough defenders, the Sassy, to defend balls into the box? Like, there's a fundamental issue why we cannot defend crosses and set pieces, and we're letting in a lot of goals from there. There's a fundamental reason why our midfield, we're losing the midfield battle week in, week out. And it's not because Enzo and Caicedo are shit players. Fundamentally, there's something wrong with the setup and the way the team's operating, because we're getting overrun every single week there. So, like, I think the manager's been dealt a tough hand, and like, it's more that the problem's deeper than just him. But I would admit, mate, there are some fundamental basics within this team that just aren't there, that should be there. And a competent coach like Pochettino should be getting the basics out of this team. And we're not even seeing the basics right now. We've regressed since the start of the season.
I mean,
certainly these last few weeks.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this. I mean, do you see more effort this season than last year?
Yeah, I do.
Not hard.
I know, but I mean, if we are going to base it on that, I mean, that's one thing that we knew Poch was going to instill. We talk about that fire. So we see more effort, but he's still saying to these guys, we need more fire, we need more passion. So for me, he's improved the squad. He's got a hungry group of players. They're still not hungry enough. And then actually you can go back to the ownership and the decisions we made in terms of giving these players long contracts, because you get a player on a 7-8 year deal, they're secure. They're cushy, mate. They don't have to play for a new deal in 2-3 years. They don't have to worry about, the next club they're going to. They can settle down in London. Doesn't matter if they play or not. If they wanted to, they could just take our money and contribute absolutely nothing. I mean, looking back at that, I mean, I think it's still a little bit early to tell, but taking a massive risk. And it's the closest thing to Man United in terms of just having players there that should have gone years ago. Martial's a great example with Man United. We can have a number of them because we're dishing out these contracts to young players who haven't proved themselves. And they don't really have to because they've already won the prize.
But that's not on Pochettino, is it? So that's where you look higher above. That's where you question recruitment. That's where you question how contracts were given out. That's where you question ownership. That's why I think it's so much more, like Charlie said, it's so much more deeper rooted than just the manager, because these things that keep popping up, they are like deeper rooted. And like what you say, I agree with you, Alex. It is a gamble. At the end of the day, yes, you've brought in exciting young players, but they're not guaranteeing you success. Maybe half of them will turn out decent. Maybe half of them will stay. But, at the end of the day, okay, you recruited potential, but it was never an end product. It was never experience. And that's where you see it. And I know Pochettino has already called that out and said, look, we lack experience. And I keep sort of like thinking these last couple of days, maybe it was too quick, too soon. Maybe it should have been an easier transition. Maybe we should have held on to the players that we might have let go in January. I mean, a lot of them should have left, yes, 100%, but it's like moments in that where you have those players that can cover the inconsistencies of the players that are just learning and are making mistakes on the pitch. But what you're getting now is you're getting inconsistencies across the whole pitch with maybe 1-2 players to cover. And frankly, it's not good enough because it's a team sport, it's a collective, and it really does show. When everyone has a good day, like we saw against Man City, it's completely different. But that's exactly what you get with young players, inexperienced. You're not going to get consistent performances week in, week out, and that's where you question quality as well. So I think we have to talk about recruitment massively. If we have conversations about Poch, then for me, recruitment needs to be equally there in that conversation.
But the way the squad's been assembled is so poor. Like Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, like Winstanley's a great talent, got great talent ID, but he's never built a squad before. Like he's worked at a selling club in Brighton. He's never built a squad. Lawrence Stewart at Monaco worked as a selling club. He's more suited to a multi-club model. These guys have not built a squad before, and they fundamentally completely misunderstood how to build a Premier League squad, a squad that's going to compete in this league. Like you don't do it by having a team full of youngsters with one or two experienced heads in there. Like you don't see any team in the Premier League that's got that situation. Look at Real Madrid, for example, right? They've got youngsters in midfield. They've got Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Jude Bellingham, right? But they've still got Toni Kroos. They've still got Luka Modric, like experienced heads in and around that situation, right? We haven't got any of that. We're asking way too much from these young players who are very, very inexperienced. Most of them no experience in the Premier League. And we're asking them to do a really difficult job. Is it any wonder, right, that we're getting battered and dominated in midfield every single week when you've got two 22-year-olds in there and a 20, like Conor Gallagher at 23 is our most experienced midfield player? Is there any surprise that we're getting done week in, week out by 28, 29, 30-year-olds that have been playing Premier League football for 6, 7, 8 years? Are we surprised? Like the way the squad's been put together is really poor. I'm not like going to sit here and flip-flop and say that I didn't like the recruitment, because I liked a lot of the business that we've done. But ultimately, when you look now, having had a few months to look at it, you look back at it, mate, and the way the squad's been put together, it's a joke.
100%. And do you know, I went on a massive tangent yesterday. I went on an Instagram Live, and it's a weird way of comparing it, but I'm a coach myself, right? I don't coach football, but I'm a tennis coach. So Woo! I have an idea. I have an idea of what it's like to take people who are rubbish. Sounds a bit harsh. People who struggle to play.
I hope none of your students are watching.
and try and
Alex's behalf.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully nobody from. I'm not going to say the.
No, yeah,
hopefully nobody's watching. I'm not saying they're rubbish, but just taking players that basically didn't know what they were doing, didn't have the intelligence or the skill to play, and just develop them. And like, don't get me wrong, like I like what I do. I think I'm relatively good at it. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it, and people wouldn't pay me to coach them. But sometimes you just have to go out there and play. Like, there's only so much I can tell a player as a coach to do before it's like, listen, just go out there and get some experience. And so for me, what we're experiencing is just a period of Pochettino getting to know the players, and you'll see some players rise up and you'll see some players crumble. I mean, there's no doubt that not every player we've signed will be able to cut it at Chelsea. There will be a decent percentage of players that will just not cut. They won't cut it. And that will be when we need to bring in better ready-made players, because we can't keep repeating that cycle, especially with these long contracts. In fact, good news is I think the Premier League have actually voted to stop these longer contracts for FFP. So that could actually work in our favour in the future, because if we keep dishing these out, we've just got players on the beach. You know, they've got these big deals, but they're not making anything big happen.
Do you know what another problem is as well? Like, because we've got so many youngsters in the squad and like a lack of experienced senior pros, like Pochettino has got a tough task as it is. He hasn't got the time to be like, you know, putting his arm around like a load of 20-year-olds to try and get something out of them. A lot of the time you look to senior pros to guide these players as well. We haven't got any senior pros. We've got none. We've got Thiago Silva and we've got Raheem Sterling. That isn't enough. So Poch has got to be like, it's like he's running like a nursery at the moment. Do you know, like in terms of how many youngsters there are? He hasn't got the time to be overseeing a load of 20-year-olds. You need help from your senior pros as well. And we haven't got any.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, it's tough times. But for me, you've got to stick with the man. You've just got to stick with him. But, I mean, how long's a piece of string? When's it going to click? You never know.
Guys, I have trust issues, because we were here last year. Like, we were here when we were saying, give Graham Potter time. He needs time. We can't keep sacking managers. But who knows where we would be if Graham Potter was still at the job? I don't know. We might be a little bit higher above in the table, but we might not. And this is why I struggle to believe that I mean, look, if the owners sack Pochettino, I can tell you right now, I don't trust them. For me, that is like how you don't earn your trust that way, because you got it wrong once. If you get it wrong again, but you go back on your decision of saying this is now a long-term thing, this is a long regime, we're not going to be doing what we did in the old regime of just changing every 5 minutes, then you clearly can't stick to your words. We are here where we are because of you, partly as well. And then how do we go from here? Because I don't imagine, I said this earlier, I don't imagine how players that have just arrived into the club, that have been sold this dream of what we're working towards, what this process looks like, that Pochettino is the man. And then they come into training next week and they say, oh yeah, by the way, Poch is gone, he's sacked. Where do you take motivation to believe in this? And like, how are you staying at the club and trusting that any of this is real, really, and that all of this is going in the right direction, you know? So it's like, if the owners do this, then yeah, for me, I point the finger further above than Pochettino if that happens, because, you know, at the end of the day, like Charlie said, the easiest thing to do is blame the manager, because it's the only thing that can change.
100%. 100%. I mean, Reece James as well is just sad. Such a sad situation for him. And it's another hamstring injury. Hamstring injury. You know, I thought it was going to be maybe another reoccurring knee issue or something like that. But this just goes to show that, I mean, the fans have been screaming this for a long time. Get the surgery. But he hasn't done it. And obviously, we understand why. You're going to be sidelined for such a long time. But there comes a point after a number of years of having these issues, just bite the bullet. You're still a young player. Don't ruin your career for good. And like Charlie said, to quote him, become Chelsea's Jack Wilshere, because the way it's going, that's what's going to happen.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, it's a shame. Like, I know these things are out of the player's control, but I mean, he's not young. He's not that young anymore. He's 24, you know? This is where players are in their prime, where they're playing week in, week out, particularly if you're a captain. You know, you want to be out there on the pitch. You want to be with your team, particularly in times as rocky as these right now. And I mean, I know that it's obviously going to affect him mentally. It's obviously affecting a lot of fans. I don't agree with the fact that everyone suddenly come out and said sell Reece James. Like, we know that he's been injury prone for the last few years, but you know, he is still meant to be one of these players that is with us for the next, you know, 7-8 years or whatever. But I mean, you have to ask the question now, will we ever see a fit Reece James for a longer period of time? He hasn't really played more than like 3 consecutive consistent games. Obviously, he missed out on the World Cup. Then he was out again for us. Then he was back in and back out. And yeah, it's just an ongoing cycle that's repeating.
It's frustrating because like you've got such a good player. Like, he is world class on his day.
Yeah.
And like, he's the captain, and I'll always back him. And you have more leeway with a player like him because he's so good, because he's the captain, and because he's come through the academy. He's been here since he was 8 years of age. If this was just like a run-of-the-mill squad player, then yeah, sure, get rid of him. But like, this is different. So you do stick by your own, but at the same time, the amount of injuries he's picking up is ridiculous. Like, it shouldn't be happening. Like, without fail, he's missing pretty much 2/3 of every season, pretty much for the last 2 or 3 seasons. Like, since Porto, he's missed nearly 70 matches. It's almost 2 seasons we're talking that he's missed since Porto. Like, that's unacceptable. And like, I know it's not all on him in terms of the rehab. This time, like previous times, we've definitely rushed him back because we've had an aging Azpilicueta as the other option. So we've had to get him back quickly. This time, we've been really careful. He hasn't even completed a 90 minutes yet. We've been overly cautious with him. We didn't start him at Old Trafford because there was a slight concern about his knee potentially. Like, we've managed him really well, and his body keeps breaking down. So whatever rehab, you know, they've been doing on these previous occasions clearly isn't working. I understand it's obviously the final decision is with Reece, but you know, it'll be in consultation with the club doctors, specialists, etc. But now we get to a point, right? Okay, he's out till February or March if he doesn't have the surgery. If he has the surgery, it could be longer. Surely, if this happening so often now, just get the surgery, take the rest of the season off, and come back ready for the start of next season, because we can't keep going on like this, where he rehabs for a few months, comes back for 3 or 4 games, and then we rinse and repeat that cycle. You either get the surgery, or this is just going to keep happening, and it's going to ruin his career.
But, you know, he's pushing it back because the side of him thinks that, you know, there is always a what if when you come back from surgery, that it's just not ever the same.
Yeah, but he's not even tried it. So, like, everything, he's tried all the other stuff. whatever the other rehab is, and that isn't working. So why not do the surgery? I understand what the potential like downsides to the surgery are. I mean, if it's just about a length of time you're out for, the amount of injuries he's had, the amount of time he's missed, he might as well have had the surgery straight away, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Also, as well, when you look at it, he's come back this time. I don't think he's looked that great, to be honest with you. I mean, against Man United,
good games. He's had good games. City was very good, but I agree with you, mate. He's not been the best.
Well, from his standards, for me, it's the worst I've ever seen him. And that's a high standard. I'm not saying he's been playing badly, but you're looking at a world-class player. You're not seeing world-class performances every single game. But I mean, another thing that he brings is just a bit of stability. Like, I think the best passage we had against Everton was when he was on the pitch. As soon as he comes off, what happens? Cucurella right back, stick Colwell as a left back. I was thinking to myself, goodness. I mean, Charlie, you were sat next to me, mate. It was like, you just knew it was going to be tough. Like, if you don't have dynamic fullbacks who can just be consistent on their side, and also it helps the centre backs knowing who you're playing with. Like, you've got to feel for Disasi and Badiashile and Silva when they are playing, because 1 week they're playing with Cucurella, 1 week Disasi's a right back, then you got Colwell at left back. Like, there is never any consistency. And the weird thing about it is, it's not like Potter chopping and changing every week. Poch has actually tried to remain quite consistent with his starting 11s, but the injuries haven't helped, and it's just frustrating, man. It's so frustrating. I mean,
in modern day football, if you haven't got dynamic fullbacks, like you're struggling straight away. Like, as you say, like, you got Reece on one side, fine, he gets up and down, does the job, but on the other side, Cucurella doesn't really get forward that much. Nothing against him, he doesn't get forward that much. He's more of a defensive-minded fullback. Levi Colwell, you're going to get nothing going forwards from left back because he's a centre back. If Disasi plays right side, we've seen Disasi play right back a few times this season. He doesn't get forward. That's fine, because he's not a fullback, and it's not his game. But when you've got one each side that don't get forward, or it's not natural for them to get forward, you've got a massive problem as a team. You've got two attacking outlets that are missing. And yeah, I mean, look, Gusto's injured as well at the moment. Hopefully, maybe he's back for Sheffield United. You don't know, but it could be Disasi at right back again. It could be Cucurella if he's fit or not. It goes back to another thing as well. Like, consistency is so important, but with all these injuries, we're having to chop and change quite a lot at the back recently, which doesn't help things. Even though it's not excuses, but it's just reality. It doesn't help. You want continuity with your goalkeeper and your centre back pairing in your defence, and the defence is chopped and changed quite a lot this season.
Yeah, even the goalkeeper now. We've got Petrovic for a few games.
I feel so bad for him. He did not deserve that. He deserved to have a good game to make his debut. The long-awaited goalie we signed that I was so excited to see. Instead, he had to come on when we were having another crap game, and all eyes were on him. And of course, I mean, yeah.
To be fair, I actually think Sanchez would have caught that cross that he pushed out for the goal. I'll be honest. I'll be honest. Sanchez has not been that great, but one thing he's very good at is commanding in the area and collecting crosses and balls into the box. I actually think he would have caught that.
Petrovic was shitting himself. Let's be real. You've come on in your Chelsea debut.
It's not what you want as a goalkeeper coming on with 5 left. You don't want that.
Exactly, when you're losing as well. Come on, not fair.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to see him get a run of games. And to be fair, like, if his performances are good and really it's the distribution.
For it, guys.
Yeah, I mean, if we can see the distribution with him that we don't get with Sanchez, and get a couple of good saves alongside as well, then maybe you can have an argument to see him getting more minutes. But
he looks quite short.
He's a bit shorter. I don't know.
Sanchez is really tall.
Sanchez is quite tall, but I mean, just lastly on Reece, like, I think the problem we might have now is, like, obviously Gusto's going to be the main right back, which is fine, top player. But what happens if he gets injured or gets banned? We've got there's no right backs, and what we're back to playing Disasi or Cucurella at right back. Like, do you know what I mean? So, like, this is what I mean when you do cut a bit of slack for the manager, because the hand you've been dealt's not great in the first place, and then when you've got the injuries that we've had to deal with this season, which is worse than anyone else in terms of, amount and to key personnel, like it's hard to build up the head of steam as a team. So like I don't know if maybe I don't know if we look at. I mean, if it was possible to bring a right back in on loan in the window, would that be maybe something we potentially might look at? I don't really know, but like to go with just one recognised right back for potentially the rest of the season, that's a big ask.
I think as well. It goes. I mean, who are you going to get in? Another young player?
Well, I don't know. Like, if you try to get someone on loan, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you could find someone on loan. It's just a thought, maybe, because like if Reece gets the surgery, it's going to be most of the season he's out for. Like, just to have Gusto and then you have Cucurella or Disasi to play right.
And let me remind you that we literally almost sold Cucurella as well in summer.
Yeah, but I mean, it goes back to it as well. Just using the players for what they're good for. I mean, if you're asking Cucurella to push up, he's not great. But if you're just playing at left back, then he's a solid choice. And yeah, it's mad as well because Poch doesn't even play a system that requires Reece to run as much as he did under Tuchel with the back three.
Yeah,
the wing
back fullbacks is a bit less running, isn't it?
It makes it easier for him, and he still can't handle it. So for me, got to get the surgery. I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah, it simply has to.
Just take the hit.
Yeah, there's no other option now. There's no other options. Like he has to do it. Simple as that. And if it means missing the rest of the season, then so be it.
So I mean, looking at this, we've already looked at potentially getting a right back, depending on the James Gusto situation. Where else do we need to strengthen? And looking a little bit closer, specifically in January. I mean, what's realistic?
We need a striker. We need a striker. Like that's the biggest thing we need. But problem is though, like when you need experience, like not just experience but quality as a centre forward. One, there's not that many quality centre forwards about in the first place. Secondly, it's even harder to find them in January. Like you look at sort of the reports and that are coming out, and like the top two names on like the list and that, Victor Osimhen, Ivan Toney. Osimhen in January, I'll be real, I think it's virtually impossible. I think the only way we get Osimhen in January is if we agree a deal for him to come, but then he comes in the summer because Napoli aren't going to let him go mid-season. And I don't think we're in a position to spend like 120, 130 million pounds on a player. But then you've got the other problem with Ivan Toney where you're thinking, right, well, if Arsenal can sort themselves out financially and genuinely want Toney, why would Toney at 27 going on 28 next year, this will be his one big move, why would he come to Chelsea when you don't know when we're going to next be in the Champions League, you don't know when this team's going to be any good, or you could go to Arsenal where they're going to be in the Champions League regularly, the team's in the ascendancy and they're getting better. So the longer we go on not being good, then the harder it's going to be to convince these players to come. The younger players, it's not too much of a problem because, we'll probably be good in a few years' time. But for the more experienced older players this might be their one big move in their career, it's going to be harder to convince them. So I don't know what sort of quality you can get in January in terms of a centre forward. There's been links with the Swedish Sporting Lisbon forward, like Victor Gyökeres. I mean, he was at Coventry last season in the Championship. He's banging goals for Sporting Lisbon this season, but it's not the quality we need. We need, someone to come in right now and do the business. And January is really hard. We had a busy January last window, but it was a lot of younger players coming in, which is easier to do. So, like, it's clear what we need. If we can get a centre back, we'll try and get a centre back in terms of like a squad player to cover off Chalobah going, and then Silva probably leave at the end of the season. But maybe a midfield player potentially. I think I don't know. Like centre forward has to be the number one priority, but it's so hard to get a forward at the best of times. And in January, that's going to be even tougher because it's just a lack of options available. And the two main options, I think they're going to struggle to convince them to come.
It's so interesting, Osimhen and Toney. Now that I actually think about it, I disagree with I think they're both realistic. And here's why. If you look at where Napoli are on the table, they're 7th. They've got 24 points. They're not winning Serie A. Might maybe push for Champions League football. Inter are on top with 38. So, I mean, that's gone. The title hopes, they're not there. So for me, if Napoli were right at the top end of the table and they were fighting for something, I'd say to myself, okay, cool. You obviously want to have your best striker, and they want to push for something anyway, but it's not realistic if you look at the points tally. I'm sure the gap will probably become even further as the season goes on, because it doesn't look like Inter are going to be dropping points anytime soon, and it's the same with Juventus and a lot of these other teams. And then with Tony, actually, if you look at what we are, and this seems like I'm throwing shots at our own club when I say this, we are actually a mid-table team.
Well, we are right now, yeah.
And Ivan Toney is the perfect striker for a mid-table team. And he could be the one player that repels us to actually still be able to bag goals when we're not playing well. And he's got a proven record of it in the Premier League. So actually, from that side of it, I don't think it's an unrealistic expectation, because one thing that it will get at Arsenal is the instant expectation, and he'll have that at Chelsea as well. But at Chelsea, you know that you'll have the chances and you can carry this team. At Arsenal, there's other great players around you, and sometimes for players like Tony and other players that come from small teams where they're the main man, they actually struggle when they play with a whole group of superstars, because you've got Havertz, you've got Saka, Martinelli, all these great players. It doesn't always enhance your abilities. I mean, I'm not saying that Tony's not a big player. I'm not saying he hasn't got the character, but I mean, I wouldn't put it against us to put a real big bid in and for Tony to say yes, because even where we are, we're still an attractive club, Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't rule out us doing a bid for him. All I'm saying is that if he's got the choice between Chelsea and Arsenal right now, at his age, at this stage of his career, as much as I hate to say it, Arsenal's a more attractive proposition for someone that is going to be 27 or 28. If we're talking about a 21 or a 22-year-old, then yeah, sure, I would back us to win that player. But ultimately, we haven't got a financial issue in terms of putting the money on the table potentially for whatever it would cost to get Tony. I'm just saying that, if Arsenal genuinely want him and put a package on the table for him that gets accepted by Brentford, and it's down to the player, I wouldn't fancy our chances of Tony picking us over Arsenal. I'm not saying we can't get the money together and we can't put the bids in. I just think when it comes to a player decision, I think with the situation the club's in right now, I just don't fancy that many experienced quality players deciding to come to us.
Just offer him a 10-year deal, mate.
Well, we won't be able to do that anymore, will we? But yeah, I mean, look, I don't know. January window's tough. It's hard. It's hard at the best of times. And when you're looking for quality, you're always going to be paying a January premium as well, because it's midway through the season, and it's Chelsea as well. So there's not only the January tax, there's the Chelsea tax on top of that as well. So we're going to be overpaying for any potential signings as well. But we have to add quality, otherwise it's going to be a long second half of the season, because what we've got right now is not good enough.
Yeah, I just can't really imagine a world in which even Victor Osimhen is sort of enticed by what's going on at Chelsea at the moment, because for a player that young, that good, what right now is attracting him to Chelsea? Let's be real. If he can have any club with playing in Europe, I mean, come on, that is obviously going to be appealing to any young player, but just even considering history of strikers at Chelsea, that I think enough is meant to make you think twice about the move. And maybe, yeah, it would be different if we were or looked like we were getting closer to being in Europe again. But I just don't really see it. I'm sorry, no offense to us, but it's tricky.
I think if you're Osimhen as well, you wait till the summer anyway, because if Real Madrid don't get Mbappe, they need a centre forward. They could easily afford to go in and get Osimhen. You've got PSG. If Mbappe goes, they might look at someone like Victor Osimhen to play for them. And if we're being brutally honest, we can't compete with those teams in terms of finances and in terms of offering European football. We can't compete with Real Madrid. It doesn't matter what player you are. You're not picking Chelsea over Real Madrid. It's just what happens. So. I don't know who we're going to get. There's obvious names, and we will try, and we know with Chelsea and the transfer windows that we will do whatever it takes to try and get these players. But I just don't know what quality that we can get in January that's going to make a huge difference going forwards. I mean, yes, the centre forward is going to be important. We might look at a centre back if an opportunity becomes available. There's been reports of a midfield player as well, potentially. Pochettino not liking the fact there's not enough physicality in there. And I think it goes to show that he doesn't rate some of the signings that have been bought in midfield, because we've got more than enough midfielders on the books. But I think it's clear that, he wasn't consulted on all the recruitment, and that a lot of the midfielders potentially were actually, he deems them not good enough. And we need a bit more in there.
You just need experience, man. I mean, we defended a lot of the business we did, but look, what looks good on paper doesn't necessarily look great on the pitch. And even with the injuries, I think with a fit squad as well, there's still be issues. There's still be things that need to be addressed. You just need experience, man. And regardless of the players we sign and the quality, I do want to just see some proven players that know how to lead a team. I know Kachanoglu as well from Inter. Apparently he was linked to us. I doubt that would happen, but I mean, I'd be
attacking midfielder
signing like that.
We don't need another attacking midfielder.
Well, no, but when I say this, Charlie, I'm talking about experience.
Oh, experience. Yeah, but I think the experience when it's got to be quality as well. It can't just be always experience, because last season we had loads of experience and that got us nowhere. It has to be quality. We have to sign proven quality, and that's at the best of times that's difficult. It's going to be even more difficult in January. We'll be busy and we'll sign players. I think we'll end up signing 2 or 3, but I don't know if we're going to be able to get the targets we want.
Yeah. What about you, Nina? Any other players that you think we should have our eyes on, or striker? And obviously that's the main priority, isn't it?
Yeah, look, striker, and I would still say goalkeeper. I mean, moving forward, if we're looking long term, I don't think Sanchez is good enough for a team that's competing one day again for top 4 or contending for the title in the future. I just don't see him as a long term player, and that's not me being unfair. I like what I've seen in a lot of games. I think it's been good on the most part, but it's not enough. It's not enough, and I don't look at him and think, yeah, you could definitely be a world-class goalie. And yeah, it might just do this season. It might just do. But moving forward afterwards, if we're becoming serious contenders to move up further and challenge in Europe again and be up at the top there, I don't think Sanchez is Chelsea's long-term goalkeeper.
I would agree with that. I think that's a fair thing to say.
It's a tough one. I still think he deserves more of a chance, to be honest with you.
I agree.
Yeah.
If we're not jumping to conclusions with Pochettino, for example, I think we should give the players a chance as well. Don't get me wrong, some of them have been fucking shite. But Vinicius, Madrid's talked about him. Vinicius wasn't great when he first came to Madrid. He needed time. And in football, believe it or not, although fans make a lot of noise, sometimes you do get the time. But the owners will be the judge of that. There's only so much talking we can do.
You have to have the time, but yeah, ultimately it's kind of out of our control. But in terms of a few players will definitely leave as well. Chalobah will go. I think Ian Martson will most likely go as well.
Noni Madueke, apparently.
And Madueke, if a suitable loan offer comes in for Madueke, then I think he'll go, because he's just not playing. And this, again, going back to recruitment, is part of the problem that we're going to face. When you stockpile a load of young players all of the same age, young players need minutes to develop. And when they're taking those minutes off each other, some of them are going to stop developing because they're not playing. And someone like Madueke, who, all right, he's been injured and he's not had the most of his opportunity, not made the most of the few opportunities he has got, he needs to go and play regularly. And that's not going to happen at Chelsea right now. So I think he'll go on. I think if a loan offer came in for him that was deemed suitable, then that would make sense. But that's going to be part of the problem we're going to have going forwards, is that I think a lot of the players we've signed will end up leaving. I'll be real. I think maybe 3 or 4 of them will stay in the next couple of years. And I think a lot of them will actually move on.
Well, very interesting conversation, guys. Nice first episode as well. Sometimes it doesn't flow. When you
is it nice for you to actually be able to talk instead of you listening to me talk at the fan cams?
Yeah, it's a little bit different, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, listen, guys, if you if you enjoyed this, please leave a thumbs up on the video. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're on the road to 250,000. And if you agree or disagree with anything that myself, Charlie, or Nina have said, just let us know why. It's always interesting to see what you guys have to say. But it's a dark time at the club, but I can promise you it won't be forever. Might be for a long time, the way it's going, but it won't be forever. But we will be there on Saturday when we play Sheffield. Hopefully we can get a result. Thanks for coming on, Charlie. Thanks for coming on, Nina. Always a pleasure. And up the Chelsea.